Once you're done finishing up your snowman, you can go ahead and set him to the side, and then we are going to get more clay out with your plastic knife. For this next part of today's lesson, you'll be grabbing the same amount of clay that you grabbed for our last snowman. Okay, so I grabbed roughly this much. I think that's about the same. No biggie if it's a little off. And then as you can see, I still have a good amount of my clay block left. I'm gonna go ahead and take this, put it back into the bag. This will be the last time you're getting clay out of your bag today. Because it's my last time I'm grabbing clay out, I am gonna throw just a little bit of water in there just to keep it damp over the weekend. Again, if your clay is really dry, you'll be wanting to add a lot more than I did. Okay, now I've got my clay piece. As always, I'm going to start by kneading and wedging it. And to be honest, your first steps for this piece is going to be the same as your last piece. So what you'll need to do, knead and wedge this piece of clay, cut it into 3 relatively equal sized pieces, and then roll them into 3 ball shapes. So I have started attaching mine together. However, as I'm about to show you, the attachment technique we're doing for the second snowman is different than we used for this first snowman. So what you'll need is your 3 balls of clay, your slip, a fork, and your paintbrush. So as mentioned, I already did the first 2. To be honest, I was filming it, but then all of a sudden my iPad told me I was low on battery and it completely stopped and deleted that whole segment. So I'm gonna show you guys how to attach all these 3 pieces together by showing you the last bit of attachment. So first things first is you are going to flatten out both surfaces that are going to attach just to give them a little better surface area. So you don't have to do much. You can just quite literally do a quick little tap on the table surface and you'll notice, come on, focus, focus. You notice that looks a little flatter now. And do the same thing on this side. So now we have 2 slightly flattened surfaces that are going to attach really nicely. So remember our process is score, slip, stick, smooth. So let's start with scoring. To score, you are going to take your fork and you are just going to rough up the surface that you are going to attach. So again, scoring is just kind of like making informal X's, you might recall from last semester. And we're just basically adding like tread to a tire. This is what's going to help the clay grip and stick to the other surface. Do it on the second piece that's going to be attached. So again, right now you guys are just connecting 2 of the pieces together. You guys are working towards something that looks like this. I am just 1 step ahead right now and I'm working on my final piece. That's the only difference. So we have now scored. Now we are going to add slip, which is like our clay glue. So I'm going to dip my paintbrush in to the slip. Again, mine is a little watery, but it should work well enough for today's activity. And I'm just gonna lightly dab on the slip on top of my scoring. Don't be afraid to have a good amount of slip. More is going to help you out than having too little. Also going to put slip on the second side. Notice how I'm not brushing it in. The reason is we have all that beautiful scoring in there. And if you were to brush on the slip, it's gonna smush all that awesome scoring that you just did. So we just wanted the slip to kind of go into the scoring without being smushed in. So we've got our 2 pieces now, both have been scored, both have slip on them. Now we are going to do stick and smooth. So you quite literally just stick them together. Now it's not as simple as just pushing them on. You gotta do a little bit more work for it. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna, see how I'm just barely twisting my hand to kind of smush that down? That's just helping take all the grooves and really mush them together. I'm also turning the piece as I work with it, because if I stay in one spot for too long, I'm gonna start getting dense in my little snowman, and I don't want that. So I'm turning it around to give even pressure to all sides. Sorry guys, I'm trying to give you a good angle. My nails really aren't helping. All right, so I'm working it until it feels like it's pretty stuck on there and it's not really wanting to budge much. Great. So there's my little fella. Okay, next you're going to do the last step of clay attachment, which is smooth. So all of this slip that came out of the corners, that is totally fine because that means you have a good amount in there, which is great. But now we are going to smooth all of that out. So remember, since slip is just watered down clay, it's not going to be an issue if it gets all over your piece. So you can see that I'm really taking the slip and I'm bringing it all the way down and blending it all into the rest of the clay. This is going to work well because it also kind of smooths out your clay. Some of you guys will find yourself that you become obsessed with the concept of making your clay really, really smooth, and the slip will sometimes help. The only time you might have an issue with putting slip over your clay is if your clay is dry. So remember that clay shrinks as it dries, and slip is only watered down clay or really, really wet clay. So if you were to take really, really wet clay and put it on already dry clay, then you're going to run into issues because the slip, the wet clay, is going to crack as it tries to shrink over a solid surface. To kind of give you a visual, I don't know if you guys have ever had it, but have you ever had that chocolate syrup that goes on ice cream, but it's called like a shell or something like that, turtle shell, something, I don't know. So you pour it on top of ice cream, but then it dries, and the nature of it is it starts cracking and breaking. So that's exactly what slip looks like if you put it on dry clay. It might sound like it visually looks kind of cool, but it's not structurally sound. So I do not recommend that at all. Okay, so I've mostly smoothed this out pretty nice. You guys will probably keep going a little further with it. Just for sake of your time watching my demo, I'm gonna start wrapping this up. But ideally, by the time you're done with this fellow, everything should be nice and smooth, including especially these areas where you've done your attachments. Once you are done with your two snowmen, you will be setting them down along with your slip and take a photo of these three things to submit for your clay lesson number 3 assignments. Once you're done submitting your photo to Google Classroom, take your two snowmen and make sure you keep them, put them somewhere safe, but leave them in the open air to dry. Next class, when we return, we're going to be checking on these snowmen and see how the drying process went for them. Then you can go ahead and clean up the remainder of your materials and your tools. Alrighty guys, that is all I got for you, and I will see you all next time. Take care.